Hey everyone, Josephine here, and today I'm challenging myself. I'm using stamp images that I normally wouldn't use and colors I wouldn't use normally. And I started with this plate from Viva VegaStamps, and because I was crazy lazy, I didn't mount it, so I just put that on the table, put ink all over it, put some watercolor paper on top, braided it out, and then I had a bunch of stems. And I did that before I started this video already. That's why I'm kind of weirdly explaining it right now. And then I just fuzzy cut some of the images out that I wanted to use. Again, images that I usually not really would use, but I thought it's about time. So I'm taking my art journal and I had one of my cleanup pages that when I brayer paint off, I usually have a cleanup page so I don't waste the paint. And I'm just adding a bunch of other paint on top of it, especially a really bright pink. And pink is not really my color. So I'm trying a little bit here to get comfortable with the pink, kind of work it into the background. And because I didn't want to use only pink, I also used a yellow and an orange just to balance it a little bit and make it a little bit easier for me. And then I'm taking a bunch of my mark making stamps from Viva VegaStamps and stamp those images in the same colors, again, a yellow and orange and a pink, all over the page. And because I knew I had kind of a long image that is kind of in a, is it horizontal line? No, it's the other one. I always mix those two up. I tried to keep the patterns of those background stems in the same kind of line, that it's not going to be too messy. So once I was done with the original background, it was kind of a little bit too bright for me. So I took a white, that's not a gesso, that's actually white acrylic paint, and just dabbed it all over the place. And first I tried it with a brayer, but it didn't give me the coverage that I wanted, so I used the palette knife again. Just spread the paint directly onto the palette knife and then just scraped it all over the page and dabbed a little bit to give it some texture. And then I set it all aside to dry. So now I'm taking those images, and those are all from the same plate. I'm listing it down below. I think it's 1510, so 1510. But I'm listing it down below with the link so you don't need to worry about it. And I'm coloring it using infusions. Those are watercolor powders, and they are a bit grungier. So they have a color, but then they have like brown antique kind of particles in it to make it just look a little bit more grungy, which I really like. And it makes it a little bit more unpredictable too, which I also really like. And I'm just adding just a little bit onto my craft mat, and then I'm using watercolor brushes, like water tank watercolor brushes. I don't know what you would really call them. And basically use those powders like I would use any other watercolor, like either if it's a tin or a paste. Same idea. And as you can see here, I'm not staying in any lines by all means, because this image, how do you color it? I have no idea. I think usually you would stamp it directly into the background. Well, I stamped it on watercolor paper and I still wanted to use it because it's so different to what I normally do that I just, wanted to figure things out. So I just colored the whole thing in. And then I'm also coloring in this, well, I call it rhinoceros. I hope that's the right word even in English, but that's what I'm coloring. And the guy with the hat. And as you see, I fuzzy cut everything. And my idea was, because one of the sentiments says Fringe Scientists, and I had to think about the TV show Fringe, which is like all over the place and like a lot of weird things happening. So I thought, you know what? That rhinoceros is now a guy, and the weird veins and everything is the body. I don't know if that makes sense. It does now. And then I'm adhering just everything together. For those things, I started just using my normal Tombow Mono Multi, whatever the long name is, instead of any gel medium, because gel medium takes so long to dry, I find. And normally for those things, that Tombow normal craft adhesive is totally fine, so I'm not even worrying about those types of things anymore. And then I'm just assembling my whole thing. So the rhinoceros is the head. It gets a hat. It wears a suit, and then underneath the suit you can see like the entire body. I know that what you see there with the heart and the kidneys and all the veins, that's not actually like a human body. At least I don't think it is. I'm not a doctor or anything. It looks more like a small animal laying on the back when someone cut it open. I hope you're not eating right now. Anyway, so I adhere that all together, and then I'm adding a few white and black marks again. So with the black, I'm actually pulling out some of the stamped lines out of the pattern again, and the white just helps to, you know, highlight a few things. But before I'm tearing it down, I'm taking the same stamp, and now I cut it up, but I still didn't mount it, to add some background patterns here using black ink, because it felt, even though you could see, like from the first stamping in yellow, orange, and pink, you can see those, you know, marks in the background, but I wanted to add more marks that are more visible. So I used the black ink, my black archival ink, and stamped the same images, including the veins, all over the page. I tried to stay in 3 distinct areas so it's not getting too busy, because the image I find is already rather busy. But yeah, that's kind of what I did. And then I'm tearing it down. Ta-da! Just adding something heavy on top and letting everything fall down. Of course, you know, you always make a huge mess. And then letting it sit for a second. So because I adhered it a little bit over the border of the page, I'm just cutting that little piece off, and I didn't want to waste it, so I'm just adhering it back on top. You can barely see it. If you look close, you see that there's kind of something funky going on, but like this, it looks just fine, and I didn't waste a piece. Well, kind of. Next up, I'm outlining my Fringe Scientist with a black pen to make him stand out a little bit more, but I had some difficulties. It's a black acrylic pen, and for whatever reason, it didn't work quite well. Anyway, I figured it out, and then I'm just outlining the sentiment, well, the label, and then finally I'm adding some white paint into it as well. So at first I outlined it with a black acrylic paint pen, and then I went over it with a white acrylic paint pen just to add, you know, a bit more dimension. I love doing that in general. And then I think I'm done. I'm thinking a little bit about more. Oh yeah, I'm covering up one thing on the face because I smeared it a little bit with a white pen at one point. So I'm just covering that up again, and then I think I'm calling it a day. Well, what do you think? Does stepping out of my comfort zone make sense? Should I do that more often? I think everybody should do that more often. It's definitely fun to try to work with something different, no matter if it's a different medium or a different type of image, like in this case. And I actually really like it. I think it's kind of interesting. It definitely is very different than, again, what I would usually do, but I kind of like the outcome. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would love if you would subscribe or give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you. And yeah, then I hope I'll see you soon with the next video. Bye!